Sircom. I'm the editor of Hifi Plus Magazine in the UK. We're a high-end audio journal, and I'm here with Ricardo Franassovici, who is the owner, founder, CEO, Big Cheese, Grand Fromage, head honcho, and chief of Absolute Sound. And yeah, first of all, let's tell us about the company.
The company has been founded around sounds, absolute sounds rather than another term. And the reason being is that it was the terminology we used to use when in the rock industry where I come from, prior to audio. So I wanted to bring into the home the thrill of what I was leaving behind me, which was the industry, and all its recordings, live events, musicians' demos, etc., etc. So Absolute Sounds was created to try to bring that thrill back into the home.
And how do you think you achieve that in terms of the systems? How do you build systems in that way?
Okay, first, obviously, I had to travel the world and learn from my mistakes, of course, because everybody is learned through mistakes. I imported various products which were quite famous, and they were all very good at the time for what they represented. But as the company grew in time, I realized that the single component was not really the end solution. That really, in order to do that, you have to have experience in matching components.
Yeah.
A bit like a chef has got an experience in matching his ingredients. So you have to, it's a very delicate process. It's not something that I think a consumer is capable of doing on its own. So we bring this experience to the market, and we assist our dealers with this concept, which is not the typical quad times, shall we say, or BBC times audiophile experience. Those were very restrictive. You had to sit in a special position. You had to make sure you were in time and focus and align yourself. This was what I felt a very stressful experience, because you keep on having to chase something. So no, I wanted to create a very relaxed sound that resembled the best illusion of the real live event.
Yep.
And in order to do that, I started mixing and matching components and bringing brands that were suitable to these matches.
Yeah, I mean, I find quite often that a lot of supposedly good audio is sounding very electronic and very kind of hard sounding and harsh sounding. What do you feel about that?
This is a term that I've puzzled the industry a few years ago. I used to say this component suffers from electronicity. Now, electronicity is where the extreme of electronicity is you're sitting in a restaurant and there's a speaker above you and you cannot hear the music, or you can vaguely imagine what the music is coming out, although you know the music, but you have to really work hard, and the rest is all noise. So electronicity is really noise and components.
Sure.
And this is why I call it electronicity, because this noise is generated electronically. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's sense.
And so we try to, over the years, that's what we've been doing: peeling off, getting rid of the noise, and saying to these musicians, "Come closer to us.
Yeah.
Come closer to us," so that the experience becomes really something very thrilling.
Yeah.
It's like a sensation.
Yeah. I mean, you talked there about musicians. I think it's an interesting thing that a lot of times when you go to an audio show, you hear the same pieces of music all the time, and people often they buy these expensive audiophile pressings of different pieces, and you get guys who've got like 37 different versions of Kind of Blue and 500 versions of Dark Side of the Moon, and I sometimes get quite sort of upset by that, because actually what you need is to just enjoy the music in many respects. I don't know how you feel.
Completely. I'm so happy you took me there, because as some people go to the gym to release their frustrations, I take a pleasure every month to take a hammer and break some of these audiophile pressings. And the reason I break them is that I don't want to even give them to my worst enemy. So basically, I believe that I'm a great believer. Maybe it's quite narrow-minded on first presses,
Yeah.
because they recreate. They are positioned in time, and they represent. They've got that time stamp, and obviously the organicity that or the organic sound that was produced at the time. For example, and don't disrespect, by the way, some of the great audiophile labels. I like Chad Kassem
Yep.
and all these, and what he's doing, finding old tapes. But what I personally dislike is when they bring another mastering engineer 20 years later to remaster what was mastered 20 years before. And most of these engineers, I've seen it recently with some jazz, I'm not going to mention names, they use engineers that do things like Steely Dan, etc., and then they're suddenly mixing Matt Waldron and Miles Davis and Paul Chambers. What? They didn't even know what these guys were doing at the time. So yes, I'm against audiophile pressings in that sense.
Yeah, no, but I mean, on saying that, I know these records are really absurdly popular, but there are times when I've heard records that were cut in the 50s and early 60s that are the originals, and you hear them today and they're phenomenal. There's so much information there, and you wonder how they managed to get all of that information there, given the equipment that they had, given the replay equipment they had in the studio is probably not as good as the stuff we have now. So I always wonder why there's the bother of remixing things. I know there's a lot of people who say, sort of like Rudy Van Gelder didn't know how to mix, which I think is crazy, because if you listen to his originals, I'm
a big collector of Rudy Van Gelder, and that was very insulting. A fellow of yours, a journalist, which I'm not going to mention today, one day told me that Rudy Van Gelder this, Rudy Van Gelder that. This is a piece of history. This is like telling me Van Gogh this, Van Gogh that. He captured, he got these guys together. They're represented now, they're the classics of all classic times, musicians of jazz.
Yeah.
So for me, you can't, and then especially when I hear afterwards that the guy that's remixing them is mostly appropriate to Steely Dan.
Yeah.
So, it's, anyway.
But I mean, I think we're sort of getting away from the plot a little bit, because obviously talking about recordings then, there are still great recordings. I mean, I think this is one of the things that you've always said, is that a good system should play everything.
Everything. And if the recording is not that good, well, start blaming the engineer. But don't blame the system. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Make a system that doesn't have any blame.
Because the problem with audiophiles, as you know, is that they use good music, good recordings to listen to their equipment. Wow, this is so wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, am I there to listen to a preamp or a power amp? No. I'm there to to listen to music and to have a pleasure and a thrill.
I think this comes back to, it's difficult. I have a problem with this because my magazine's called Hifi Plus. We're at a hi-fi show, but I think that whole thing of the hi-fi part is very out of date. I mean, if you say hi-fi to a lot of people, they won't know what it means. It's like old TV programs that were in color. Everything's in color now. Everything is supposedly hi-fi, but there is a point where that just ends. There's a level that's okay, and then beyond that. And I think people don't recognize that in some respects.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of that the other day, because I agree. We've been brought up with hi-fi this, hi-fi that. But I think if you make it then generic, but really overimpose over this generic title, we call it like hi-fi. We could call it Batman, let's say. So that's the name, the title. It becomes a generic name. Then you could superimpose over it audio experiences, audio systems, which is more in line with today's world.
Sure.
Streaming, digital, analog. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the things. A lot of people who say, "Oh no, it's only vinyl, or it's only CD, or it's only streaming." What do you think on that?
Oh, I'm not that divided. Honestly, I'm not that divided. I tell you an instant. I'm not going to mention names, or other than obviously to say that in this instance, it is a product that I represent that won a shootout a couple of days ago at a very famous journalist, but I'm not going to mention names so that I don't create um, uh, animosities, shall we say.
Sure.
The journalist in question had a shootout between a digital player and free turntables. Well, this already is very unconventional.
Yeah.
It's very unconventional. So what I can tell you is that the number one and the number two are products that I represent. And one was digital, and the other one, obviously the one that won was the analog one.
Yeah.
And then the two extra turntables ended up third and fourth. And that was a proper professional shootout with done really under control conditions. So yes, I believe you should be able to experience both things.
Yeah.
I think there is a time to listen to vinyl, and there's probably a time to listen to digital things because they are much easier to access nowadays with via tablets, Kobus, wherever you stream, or via hard drives with beautiful software interfaces. So they're on the go type of a easy thing to use on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
And vinyl for me is more like the experience of opening a great bottle of wine. Yeah. You take your time, you put your album on, and you relax and read a book or enjoy life with your family and be surrounded with that extremely that extreme experience. So yes, I'm not one of these guys, for me it's like football, teams, this team, that team. No, I'm not into a team thing. Both today, that was not always the case, as you probably suspect, but in 2023, you got incredible digital playbacks,
Yeah.
And I don't mind saying that I'm very proud to represent, for me, the company that leads on the digital format of audio. Yeah.
Great. Well, look, I'm a very English guy, and even though it's the end of September, we're out in the sun, I'll get sunburned if we're not careful. So let's wrap this up. Thank you very much, Ricardo.
Thank you.